So Tony, you've got a couple here and a couple there.
Thanks for your presentation, Jeff Hines. The last several 4Cs have stated that your focus is on turning technical evaluation into paid license. By your own admission, that's failed pretty well. It hasn't got as much traction as you wanted. My question is, would you, or why don't you, offer different entry packages? For example, a lower sign-on fee and a higher royalty, or a lower sign-on fee and milestone payments, for example. It seems to me that we need to get more sign-ons rather than the upfront fee.
Go ahead.
Thanks for the question, Jeff. When we talk those statements about converting, those are technology engagements. We're going deeper in the engagement models, not the commercial conversations that are taking the time. I made a comment in the middle of my speech about we understand the IP sales cycle deeper now than we did a year ago. It's incredibly detailed in terms of the amount of technical work and collaboration between the companies. Back to the NDA question, we are in very deeply with these companies doing works on their models, their data sets, their designs. When it comes to commercial conversations, obviously we do have price lists, but we obviously, like all good businesses, we will negotiate. But the term or the comments in the 4C are all about converting all the deep technical engagements. That's what we're working on. Not the commercial is not an issue right now. Okay?
There's a question over here. Yep.
Thank you. My question is not just my own personal question, but on behalf of a number of other investors, and it relates to disclosure, continuous disclosure. You made the comment about taking it very seriously, and we respect that, but we also see that the guidelines suggest that companies should err on the side of caution, i.e. over-respond rather than under-respond. Taking an example, Mercedes moved the dial very quickly, that particular event a year or so ago. Since then, we see ARM come through. Now basically, ARM is a massive company for our purposes compared to Mercedes. I wouldn't call Mercedes a one-trick pony, but it is in the auto industry, and it's a smaller luxury car provider. ARM, on the other hand, is addressing all parts of the industry and all industries for that matter. So the question is, why can't we do more? The website is missing information when it comes to partnerships, for example. I tried to send someone there the other day. I was embarrassed to see there were gaps, significant gaps, in the website as far as our partners go. With the quarterly report, there were 12 sentences in the quarter. I mean, I see that and other people see that, and we see other companies using that as a free hit to tell investors whatever is important to the company to get across. And we think there are substantial areas that there could be more done in that area. Is there a reason that it hasn't been emphasised to date?
You want to go first, Ken?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I didn't catch your name, sir, but...
Sorry, Alan Carey.
Thanks, Alan. Again, there was a lot there. So first of all, thank you for the point about the website. We'll definitely check on that for sure. And I think it was a general, even though it was called continuous disclosure, it was about communications in general. But I would say we utilize all vehicles on our communication. Every Sunday night, I have a review with my marketing team to look at our planned announcements for the week. And a lot of them come out through PR and blogs and things like that. So we are communicating a lot, but I want to address your specific a little bit more around the quarterly. It is something we certainly can examine if it's too brief in there. We've always just kept it briefly, keeping it on the financial highlights, but I'm glad to take that back and strategize if we want to use it a little more communicative or not. I don't have an answer for you right now.
Sort of like a reference source of material.
Yeah.
It's actually good feedback.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It's good feedback, and I just want to huddle with Ken, my CFO, and others. That if we can do that, we should expand that section for sure. But again, I would say we use a lot of different vehicles around the ASX. I think Antonio kind of addressed our view on that, which I didn't hear an ASX angle in your question just now.
So that was along the lines that the ASX says err on the side of giving more information rather than less, and avoid prosecution by doing so. That's from 3.1 of the guidelines.
Yeah. We think, and we get a lot of thought. I think he said we give a lot of energy that we're hitting the right mix and fully compliant and on that. But I will take the feedback about utilizing certainly the quarterly better, certainly the feedback on the website better. But I would also say, please let us know if you reach out to us and let us know if the other vehicles, the blogs and the PR are not reaching you, right? Because we're putting a lot of stuff out.
Just as an example, there are tech companies doing CEO interviews on virtually every substantial announcement.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying you should, but I think there are things that are being done by others that are worth looking at.
Yeah, we'll take it. One thing I'm not afraid to do is talk, so I would be glad to do as many. I am doing a quarterly webcast with Tony. We may have heard podcasts. I've been doing a series of podcasts. I've done 3 or 4 webinars in the last couple of months. But yeah, I hear more communication.
But a group of us are very happy with the progress being made in the last year. We want to emphasize.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And then Tony wants to say something.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I'm going to 100,000 foot level answer, if you don't mind, Alan, because I think your question is absolutely solid, and like I said, it's a discussion that we have constantly. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to step back and just say where we sit in the design cycle, right, is at the absolute early stages. So when somebody engages with us, and we're engaging with their engineering teams, and they're evaluating our technology, right? Chances are there's a full-on product marketing organization behind that that's thinking about all the different requirements in terms of what subsystem their chipset will go into, and they're all thinking about that. And then they make IP decisions, and they'll say, all right, we're gonna take your IP and we're gonna integrate it into a chipset, right? And then they start working on the chipset, and that typically could take anywhere from 1 to 3 years. And then from there, that chipset has to work its way into a subsystem that actually goes into a product that is going to be out in the marketplace that we're all going to consume. That's a pretty long process, right? The scary thing for us as a company is when we engage with somebody, right? And we get into the door and we start talking to their engineering personnel, and their engineering personnel get excited. They take our technology, they start integrating it, they start working on prototypes, and it's pretty clear that we're on a very good path. The problem there is, do we tell people? We don't know if it's going to make it into an end production system. So if we start telling people we're designed in, and it doesn't go to an end production system, oh, I know I'm going to get lots of phone calls from people, right? It's a delicate situation for us only because the design cycles in tech are so long. You mentioned a very large company in Germany who makes cars. The design in and verification period just for safety is 3 to 4 years. Just for safety. A lot can happen in that process, right? So the debate that we always have internally, and my sincere apologies for being long-winded on this, but the debate that we have internally is, at what point do we have enough confidence level to actually issue messages that could directly impact the share price saying that we're engaged with somebody? That's hard. That's really hard. I appreciate with all my heart the comment that you made about erring on the side of over-disclosure. But given the market that we serve and where we come in that design chain, that could actually work against us. And that is the dichotomy that we face constantly when we have these discussions internally. I share that with you not to give you a direct answer. I share that just so everyone can understand where we sit in that chain and how that process goes forward and why that's a really, really, really tough subject. The good news, I feel we have a wonderful executive team. We have a fabulous board that, has to make those decisions as to when we do or don't announce anything. So I hope that helps a little bit. Sorry. Yeah. Staying in the room. There's one over there. Okay, hold on. We'll go here and then over there.
Hi, this is Ganesh here. I have a question to CEO. China has banned semiconductor from US recently. What effect it has to brain chip? Thank you.
Thanks, Ganesh. We are going to engage where we have any possibility. Of course, we respect the laws to do that, but we are not selling chips, right? We're selling IP. So we will look for customers wherever we feel appropriate as long as we comply with the law. And right now, there's nothing that we're doing that is not compliant. So, it's a big market. We would love to address wherever we can.
Tony.
My name is John Cook. I'd just like to ask, do you or the board know of any product that is currently got a CADA in it that's ready to be on the market that I could or someone could go and buy today? Is there, to your knowledge, a product that has a CADA in it? And if not, can you give us any indication of a product that you think might be shortly coming to the market with the technology in it?
The most visible ones that you will see when I talked about the ecosystem is the system integrators. Those companies that we're talking about in the ecosystem program will take our existing chips, even though we're not in that business per se, we're in the IP business, and then you'll see very visible in there. You won't see it visible if somebody buys an IP license and brings it to market. But you will, because they're not going to necessarily tell you if it's out there. But we can't tell if they go out there.
Is it on? Demetrius Vaselos, thank you, Alan, for your question and Anthony, thanks for your answer on part of my question was, how long does it take before a real product hits the market with brain chip technology? It's 3 to 4 years. Just for my benefit, I guess there's probably when you do sign up with a company, there's a bit of a sign-on fee, I guess, and then you're basically getting royalties at the point of sale of that product. Is that how it's working? Right. Okay, so one question would be that would BrainChip be insisting when a product does come to the market, like Intel do with their chip, have an Intel logo on the box to say, okay, this is a fantastic computer from Toshiba, but down the bottom, instead of an Intel logo, there's a sub-logo of Intel under there, or something like that. So, and then that's when we'll see real income coming in the market in 4 to 5 years' time, if things go to plan.
Well, the kind of Intel Inside analogy probably is not a good one for what we do. We're a component of the chip itself, right? So, yeah, so, we would to say that we're, the chip in there would probably not be the appropriate, representation as part of the chip. So that's why we wouldn't do something like that. Also, too, you got Intel as a brand that's 40, 50 years old, and that where it makes a big difference as well. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, well,
I know you would.
Somebody gave me the opportunity to buy an automobile that was brain chip powered. I'd be first in line to buy it, right? So I think that's fantastic.
There's no arm inside on here.
Yeah, so I was going to actually, funny enough, Peter, that's exactly where I was going. Intel's volumes are microscopic compared to ARM Holdings, okay? ARM Holdings is everywhere. right? They have successfully positioned themselves as the standard in terms of microcomputing. But you'll notice they've not done that with the trademark strategy. They've not, right? Never have. Cell phones don't literally say ARM powered on the back of them. They don't, but yet, your typical cell phone has anywhere from 20 to 30 ARM cores inside it. So really, your question really comes down to kind of marketing strategy and branding. And in order for, Intel to do an Intel inside marketing campaign, there has to be a marketing plan around the fact that you're going to sell more computers because it's Intel inside. I'd rather have Intel than AMD. In essence, that's really where that originates from. Sean's point is absolutely correct. Given where we are in that value chain and how embedded we are into the chipset, the probability of a marketing campaign around being brain chip powered, it's going to be more at the silicon level. You're going to hear a lot about brain chip marketing itself to the silicon providers, not in your local electronics store. So we're a couple layers down is how that will effectively work. I don't know if you want to piggyback on that.
No, I mean, you hit the theme that I probably wish I had added, which is, again, we are trying to market to the people that are going to buy it, not the people that are going to buy the end computers or the end devices that it ends up in, right? So all of our marketing dollars are trying to influence some of those target markets or target customers that I was asked about earlier.
Oh, I should also piggyback on it. We should acknowledge your characterization of the business model was without question accurate. Customers might, I should be talking about the mic, my apologies. Customers will have different use requirements. Some people may only need access to our technology for 1 or 2 chips. Other companies may need access to our technology for a certain period of time because they're making a whole bunch of different chips. There is a license fee associated with that. When that license fee comes in, all the technology is turned over to them. So there's the exchange there. And then the back end payments come once they start shipping. Every 90 days, they submit a report to us basically saying this is how many chips we shipped, and then they send us a royalty check. So that part you've got absolutely correct. Okay. How are we doing in the room? Here we go.
Hi, my name is Kera, and I have one question for you. What sets our company's products offerings apart from competitors, and have larger firms shown interest in making similar products? And if not, why do you think the reason is?
That's you.
Yeah. What sets us apart is let's just talk about that, because yes, and the answer is yes, larger companies are showing interest in that. I talked a lot about the edge market. Most of the companies you hear today are in the data center, and what contrasts us in the edge market is the attributes of our product, which is exceptional low power consumption. That's really, really important when you don't have a power cord near you, or quite frankly, even if you do, low power matters because of the economic nature of that. Secondly, what sets us apart, we have the ability to do localized learning, which sets, we're the only one in the market that does that. So the use cases are pretty broad, which differentiates us that you can do something localized and not have to go back to the cloud to retrain. I think the neuromorphic nature that Peter envisioned when he started this company, I showed that slide behind me about the Gartner model. Neuromorphic technology is coming, and is coming quickly. This industry's been around for decades, and we've been working with old architectures that have running into really serious bottlenecks. Models are getting bigger, and the demands are getting bigger. You have to have a new approach to do it. So yeah, we're pretty unique in that particular way. Yeah, others are definitely looking at us very carefully, and other big companies or some of the Intels in the world are all going to be looking at that edge market at some point. That's why we're at the critical phase where we are right now, which is we have to innovate that much quicker, and we got to continue to get out and proliferate while the market is still fragmented.
Okay, I guess we'll take one more right there, and then we will move forward.
Chair, I do have one follow-up question before.
Okay, so we will do that.
Sean, my name is Nick. I'm a CEO of a large company myself, and I empathise with the challenges that you're going through and growing the company and trying to reach new customers. You mentioned the board approved a 5-year strategic plan. I find it quite frustrating that you can't provide shareholders with any type of revenue guidance whatsoever over that 5-year period. I have investors in my business. I meet with them on a quarterly basis. I have to show progression in the company, but I also have to show revenue guidance, forecasts, 3-way forecasts. You know, this company's been talking about this for a couple of years now. I've been a shareholder for 4 years. I think I speak for more people than myself that there is a lot of frustration around any, or the lack of any guidance on what the revenue model will be, the size of the top line, any EBITDA projections. There's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That's very frustrating. I'd like some commentary or some guidance, if possible, on what the next 5-year or 4-year, given that you're 1 year in, what that will look like.
Well, thanks for your comment and thanks for your question. You know, we talk about the long sales cycle, and I too look forward to the day. The day will come when we will do that. But until we have consistent cadence, if you will, on our execution on the commercial side, and we can predict with a higher degree of predictability, it just would not be appropriate to share at this point. It's just that simple. I don't know if you want to add any more.
There's nothing to add. There was a follow-up question, Errol.
Yes. To go back to the question about ASX announcements, a shareholder has asked quite a number of questions, most of which you covered, but there's a specific question here. If you determined earlier in the year that Akida 1.0 was not going to penetrate the market, and that the Akida 1500 is a significant advancement over Akida 1.0, these appear to be significant matters, and why were they not released to the ASX?
Go ahead. I'll let you go first.
It's an interesting question. Again, I don't want to be clear. Akida 1.0 has a place. And again, I don't want to talk about customer names, but there's a customer on itself who's taping out sometime in the near future on 1.0. So it's a solid product. My comments were very clear. It's just narrow, and it's not broad enough to build a large company on. So there's nothing to pull back and say it was not a good product. It just was narrow in its focus, and we need to get a lot broader. Around the 1500, that's just a chip. You know, again, we're in the IP model, and you know, we look forward to that chip because it's going to give us a lot more proof points again in a different configuration for existing IP. But again, we were fully compliant with all the ASX guidelines and rules, that we didn't think these met that.
Okay. So we're going to move on to the general business. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to come on to that. You'll be first. Okay. Just talking about the financial statements and reports at this time. Okay. Right. Now we'll move to the formal motions of the meeting. So I will refer you to Resolution 1 of the Notice of Meeting in respect to the adoption of the remuneration report of the company. This is a non-binding resolution. The company's remuneration report is contained in the 2022 annual report. I would highlight that in accordance with the Corporations Act, no votes may be cast on this resolution by or on behalf of a member of the company's key management personnel or their closely related parties. I will refer to these people collectively from now on as prohibited voters. A prohibited voter may, however, vote directed proxies where they do so for another person who is not themselves a prohibited voter. As chairman, I may also vote undirected proxies for a person that is not a prohibited voter in accordance with my stated voting intention to vote on all available proxies in favor of this resolution. Before opening this to discussion, I would like to mention that in the interests of corporate governance, the BrainChip board have abstained from making a recommendation with respect to this resolution. Errol, do we have any text or verbal questions received via the Lumi platform in relation to this resolution? We'll start there.
Yes, we received a question in advance of the meeting. There are a few questions, small number of questions, but I will combine them.
Okay.
Okay. As I said, there have been a number of questions in relation to compensation of the board and the CEO in the light of the company results for FY22. Could you please discuss the rationale?
Okay. There are 3 areas that I want to cover with respect to this question, and obviously leading up to this meeting, the board and many of you have contacted us with respect to compensation. So I see 3 areas to kind of comment on. First is NED compensation, and that has 2 parts. One, many of you have reached out with respect to a consultancy agreement that was put in place last year when I first came on board. And then second is just NED compensation in general. And the third is compensation for our executive team and the employee base. So I'm gonna touch on those 3. So give me just a minute just to hit a couple points, and then obviously whatever further questions we'll deal with. When I first, let me start with the consultancy agreement. So when I first came on board, Peter, as CTO and founder of the company, was wearing multiple hats, one of which was the hat of the CEO. Our previous CEO had resigned. And so there was no CEO other than Peter on an interim basis. There was no head of marketing. There was no product marketing. We had a VP of sales who was trying to basically do everything so that we didn't separate out ecosystem. There were no real processes in place, no organization in place with respect to the commercial organization. There was no product or architectural roadmap. From a corporate governance standpoint, we were weak. You fast forward to today. There is a CEO in place. There is a VP of sales in place. There is a VP of ecosystem on the executive team in place. And we've done a ton on the ecosystem front. We have a chief marketing officer in Nandana and Polly in place. There is an architecture roadmap. There is a product roadmap, and there is a definition and process in terms of how we develop our products and how we develop our roadmaps. From a corporate governance standpoint, we are light years ahead of where we were 16 to 18 months ago. There's still work to be done, of course, but we are light years ahead on all of those fronts. Really, a question with respect to my consultancy agreement could potentially be, well, geez, Antonio, given how far the company's come, should you really be a consultant anymore? And then there were questions about, well, you're an independent. And as part of the process, the board, we have constant meetings to discuss my ability to help the company out in terms of setting them in the right direction, helping them out, and I communicate back to the board to ensure my independence, and the board validates that. And that's been the process that we've been working under for a while. We're in a position now where I feel like we've kind of pushed a milestone. So I am happy to let everyone know that the kind of consultancy part that we had put before you about a year ago, the board now and myself are working to kind of terminate that agreement under mutually agreed terms, right? Which is exactly what the shareholders approved last year, because we don't need it anymore. So that's one part that's going to go away. Second, with respect to NED compensation, over the last year, we have been working quite hard to come up with a NED compensation scheme that's kind of in line with the market. You roll back and you look at how BrainChip has done things historically in the past, right? For whatever reason, there have been very large grants issued to the NEDs. And a variety of reasons for that, right? Back in the day, company wasn't paying cash, they didn't have a lot of money, right? So you pay in stock, not uncommon, right? Those grants were large though. I mean, look at one of the resolutions that's on the ballot in front of you right now for a previous NED, right? The shares in that resolution are more than all of the NEDs have combined today, right? Because we pulled all that back. Our NED compensation scheme today is pretty simple. there is a nominal cash payment, and then there is an initial element when you first come on board. You can see that with respect to Z-Loans grant that's in front of you today, and then there's an annual. And it is a scale of magnitude less than what previous NEDs were receiving from the company. And that's what we've put in place moving forward for NED compensation. I would encourage everyone, look at the global technology market, look at the companies around the globe, pull their corporate governance documents, and you will see that, now I realize this may run counter to Australian norms, but in the global technology market, that's how NEDs are compensated. Now, if you look at a Synopsys, if you look at a Cadence, if you look at a Broadcom, obviously the scale and the dollar amounts are much larger, but the structure is the same. We've taken it down, obviously, given our size. We've also had that audited by third parties, the Radfords, the Compensias. We've had third parties look at it and audit against peer groups of similar size. And again, I would challenge you, look at those companies that are public out there right now that kind of sit in that single-digit revenue up to 20, 30 million, you can see for yourself. So what we've done is we've tried to create a NED compensation scheme that's in line with global standards. That's what we've done, right? So that's on the NED piece. Lastly, on the exec team and the employees. Last year, at this AGM, we took a ton of feedback from people with respect to compensation. In addition, leading up to this AGM, more feedback has come through. And there was one cream that rose to the top of all that feedback, and that is performance-based compensation for the team and the executives. Again, if you've read the 2022 REM report, you will see that that is now in place, right? The annual bonuses that every employee gets is now tied to the annual metrics that the board approves every year. The only variance is some employees, in particular the rank and file employees, they have the ability to have personal management-based objectives that are set by their managers. So individual engineers may have a set of personal goals that they go after. So even if the company doesn't achieve its objectives, it doesn't achieve its financial targets, right? There are still some elements of the annual bonus that will pay to the rank and file employees, right? And as I mentioned in my address, last year in 2022, the average annual bonus was about 60%. And a lot of that was because of the MBO portion of the annual bonus. Now, your next question may be, well, what are the elements of the annual bonus? The elements of the annual bonus are bookings, revenue, variance to budget. That's what we have in place right now. Now, can I share those numbers directly? No, because then I'd basically be giving you forward guidance. So there is a little bit of a dichotomy there. But what I can tell you is that those metrics are absolutely positively in place. And last year, everyone didn't get their bonus, okay? Now, we've also implemented, with respect to share grants to the employees, the LTIP program, the long-term incentive program. When people receive a share grant, as an employee of BrainChip, whether you're an executive or an individual contributor, there's a 3-year metric. So the first LTIP that was put in place per the 2022 REM goes over the period of 2022, 2023, and 2024. When you get to the end of 2024, we look at the metrics that were in place for that 3-year period, and then a portion of the amount that had been allocated gets paid to the employees. Currently, the LTIP is tied to revenue growth and share price growth. That's what's in place for the LTIP, right? So right now, we are in the middle of the cycle of the first batch of LTIP that we provided to the employees, right? The other thing that I think is important to understand with respect to the LTIP is as we grow and as we get a little bit larger, The expectation is that the metrics of the LTIP will be more in line with what I call TSRs, or total shareholder return reports, that various third parties around the globe present, that match you up against peer groups within your industry, and then we measure how we're doing as a company against our peer groups. That's kind of the norm that a lot of companies follow with respect to incentive-based compensation. We're not there yet, obviously, so instead we're just focusing on revenue growth and share price growth for the reports. Probably the most important thing I can tell you is in your voting card, right? When you look at Peter's share grant and you look at Sean's share grant, I am here to tell you that I am praying that they get every one of those shares. Because we have to put in front of you the maximum number that they're going to get under the LTIP. So if they were to get that, that means we exceeded our targets by over 150%, right? If they don't, let's just say we come in at 100%, well then in that case there's going to be less than that given to them if they come in at 100%. And the extra shares that you approved would just basically go back into the evergreen pool. That's what's going to happen. And if we don't meet targets at all, well then pretty much a significant number of those shares go right back into the evergreen pool. But by law, you have to approve, or we, I should say, sorry, we have to approve the entire lot. That's what you have in front of you right now. So I hope that gives some color. And I have to admit, if I sound a little canned with my answer there, I apologize. It's just we've gotten so many questions on this. I tried to answer them all in one fell swoop. All right, so I'll stop talking there. There was a question at the back, and we will start there.
Thank you. My name is Roger Manning, and I've been a shareholder since 2016. And as you know, Mr. Chairman, well, I am one of the people that have been questioning this very issue.
Rightfully so, Roger. Appreciate all your feedback that you've given us.
I've been rabbiting on about excessive and premature remuneration since 2018, when the person in item 8, is it? I, in a fairly hostile manner, I challenged him on this whole situation. It may surprise shareholders to learn that in 2022, our directors were paid more than their peers at BHP and CBA. Read their annual reports. Companies that in 2022 generated billions in profits and paid billions in dividends to their shareholders. It may also surprise you to learn that in 2022, our CEO was paid a relatively similar amount to his counterparts in those same companies. We were told, judge me not on effort, but on results. Well, we can debate until the cows come home about what represents results. With public companies, the sole arbiter of results and success is the share price. On this day last year, it was $1.27. Right now, when I last looked, it was 40 odd cents. The remuneration you're asking us to approve for 2023 simply adds insult to shareholder injury. Once again, it's premature and excessive. If you blokes and gals are dinkum about your commitment to our company, then I suggest you pay yourselves your generous basic salaries and nothing more until our company earns more than it earns. I believe very earnestly that there is a sense of entitlement within this company. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. There was no question there to answer. I think Roger just wanted to make his point across to the shareholders, which he has made. Thank you, Roger, for your feedback. Any other? You know what? Were there any other questions online? Were there any other questions in the room with respect to the remuneration report?
Steve Liebeskind. Antonio, thank you for the passion you expressed in trying to explain the compensations when it comes to the various components of it. And it's not easy, it's an inherited one, and it's being reevaluated at various times. In regards to bonuses and everything else, it is a challenge, and unfortunately it's always done historically rather than in advance, so we can take that on board, and there'll be obviously opportunities for questions down the track. The one thing that I have struggled with, and it's not really new in Australia to any great extent, is options versus RSUs, restricted stock units. And this is appropriate for when you mentioned item resolution number 8, and in particular, options had a strike price, and in that particular case, the strike price for resolution 8 was in the order of about 12.5 cents US.
Mm-hmm.
And just a quick metric saying, if those options were to be exercised, that meant the company would receive $1 million US.
Mm-hmm.
Very simple, round numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Now to go to that extent of having that waived, there is an issue. That's point one. Point two, and I think I don't know if you have an opportunity to explain now or whether it should be done at some later date, but issuing options at a strike price means there's an incentive to get the stock price up, depending on that particular point. But issuing RSUs at a zero price entry price for a holder, it hasn't been, I don't think, particularly explained well as to the impact on to the investor community, and the difference between that. There's probably a lesser RSU number being issued to holders versus options. So there's not necessarily a question other than the fact that I'm sharing that I think there is issues, and I don't know whether we've got enough time in the day to go through it, but it is a concern.
So a couple things on that. There were a couple points there I'll touch on quick, and then Ken, I'm going to have you kind of, if you don't mind, follow up. The RSU versus option debate, I would argue, is resurfacing across the globe yet again. There was a time where options were pretty much on their way out across the board, and everyone was moving more toward RSUs for the reason exactly as you outlined, and that is you give out less that way. But what's happening now is with a lot of companies, especially in tech, with their share prices in decline across the board, now the option debate resurfaces again, because perhaps with options, it serves more as an incentive tool because you're bringing people in at an option price that is lower. That is the discussion that at Brainchip we're going to be having. There's no question. And so all I can do is acknowledge your point and say, that discussion is happening. Is there anything to share with the shareholders with regards to any resolution on that front? No. On the first part of your question, which was respect to resolution 8, yes, there was a change there between what was originally offered to him were options versus RSUs as part of what's the issuance now. And all I can tell you, we'll get to resolution 8 in just a little bit, but that is intended. That absolutely is intended. Any other questions with, yes?
I've got a comment.
Okay.
Before people vote, they've got to understand that we need the Americans a lot more than they need us. We've gone to America because the Americans can do scale. We need, the Americans have only been here for about a year. We've got to give the Americans some time to implement scale, and we have to pay them properly to do that job. That's all.
The only thing I appreciate your comments, Mike. Thanks. The only thing I will say is one thing that I've made a habit of communicating since I've come on board is we're in the global technology market. It's not about being American. It's trust me, Americans have their faults. I'm first to tell you. It's not about being Australian. It's not about being European. We were competing in the global technology market. We were competing with Korea. We were competing with Japan.
It was a compliment.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. You're getting a little. You're getting a little piece of my sense of humor. So appreciate your comment, Mike, but we're in the global technology market. All right, I'm gonna stop there. As I look around the room, I don't see hands up. So if there is no further discussion, I would like to propose the resolution that for the purposes of section 250R sub 2 of the Corporations Act and for all other purposes, approval is given by the shareholders for the adoption of the remuneration report as stated in the company's annual report for the year ended 31st of December 2022. Votes and proxies received for and against this resolution and at the proxy's discretion, including me as chairman, to vote in accordance with my stated intentions in favor of this resolution are as presented. Please submit your vote or mark your voting card in respect of this resolution.
Michael Kravitz, last AGM you stated to judge you on financials. The financials so far are almost non-existent. Why do you deserve the restricted stock units at this time?
Okay, the way that question was phrased, it was directed at Sean, but I think I'll answer the question. The board is comfortable making the share grant to Sean on the grounds that it is under the terms of the LTIP program. Again, I will clarify that what you are approving is the amount of shares that Sean would receive if we are well in excess of 150% of all the goals and metrics over the 3-year period. So the board's comfortable making that issuance on those grounds.
The last question from Mr. John Kotzias. A number of performance rights were issued to a number of employees for meeting or exceeding their KPIs. We as shareholders would like to know what these KPIs were, as there is currently no progress of this outstanding work into sales yet.
Ken, I'm going to have to defer to you. These KPIs, were these in place before I had come on board, or do we know the context of that question? No. Okay, I'm going to take that. Hang tight. I will defer on that question. Let us go and research that, and we will address that directly to the share base. Steve, did you have a comment? Did you want to make a comment? If you,
I'm happy to talk to you offline what that means.
Then I'd love to hear it, please, and then we will communicate that to the entire share base. Thank you, Steve. Any other? Good, please, Tony.
Milos Stojanovsky, shareholder for about 6 years, and representing a lot of other shareholders. And it is customary in Australia that directors of companies acquire shares out of their own pocket to show confidence in the future of the company and its potential. At this point in time, we don't have any such evidence of the board or executives in BrainChip. In fact, last year, when shares were allocated to some directors, because of American background, they were forced to sell a good portion of those shares in order to pay US taxes on those shares. Is it foreseen by the board that the board might adopt such a strategy of committing to the company with their own money to show shareholders the confidence they hold in the company so that the investment market can do so likewise?
So the direct answer to the question is there's nothing put forth to the company to put a requirement in front of the NEDs to make purchasing of. So there's nothing in that regard that's put in place. So from a direct standpoint, that's how to answer your question. What is missing from our NED remuneration scheme would be a minimum hold requirement that NEDs have to hold. And whether that comes from a period of time at which they have devoted themselves to working at the company and they have built up their annual grants to that level, which is the global norm in terms of how NED remuneration schemes operate. If you look at pretty much any company, you will see that they will say that all of our NEDs must maintain a certain level of shareholding. I do foresee us going down that path, so yes. Do I see us going down the path where we are going to require financial outlay necessarily from the NEDs? I have to admit, looking at it globally, I don't see that trend happening. I don't. If that's where the market goes, then that's where we'll go. To your last point, and this was a sensitive one because I personally got, I had a lot of you reach out to me on your comment about tax. U.S. tax law is pretty clear, right, on this. If you receive RSUs, you don't wait until you file your taxes. Those taxes are due, right? And so the global norm there with respect to the United States, working for an international company that provides RSUs, is that you do a sell to cover. Now, in most cases, that is handled by the company themselves, meaning we all, from a shareholder perspective, we don't see it because the company handles that. The problem is when you're a non-executive director, you're not an employee of the company. And to use US speak, and sorry to take the meeting that direction, you're a 1099, what's called a 1099 employee, right? So what non-executive directors are forced to do is literally put whatever their shares are in order to cover their tax. They don't see it. The moment that transaction takes place, it doesn't go into their bank account. It just shoots across straight to the federal tax authorities. So that's what we have in place right now. Going back to, I think it was Steve's comment about options, one of the advantage about moving back toward an option-based sort of scheme is that we avoid that altogether because options don't have that immediate tax liability. And I can tell you that is something that's going to be discussed. So I hope that kind of answers your question. There's a question here.
Martin Day, I'm a shareholder. I thought the restricted share units, the stock units had to be put on hold like for 3 years. You couldn't sell them. Is that, am I?
Well, okay, so hold on. Are you talking about these? Yeah, so with these shares here, you're absolutely correct. What's going to happen is that's the issuance of shares to Sean. There's a 3-year time period, okay? And then what happens is at the end of that 3-year time period, we go through the metrics, and then of the 2.2 million, Sean gets 1.5. I'm just making something up, just run with me. That's how that will work. But the moment that happens under US tax law, Sean has a tax obligation on that 1.5 that day. That's how that works.
Not until
what this gentleman was also raising is with respect to some previous issuances of RSUs that were outside of the LTIP. Some of those have already come due, like for myself, because I think the way some of my previous RSU package was put forth, there was an amount that got released like every 12 months. And so when that first 12 months hit, there was a tax obligation. The company didn't have the metrics to do the sell to cover for me. I had to do that on my own. Likewise, Sean had to do that on his own. So that's why you're seeing a little bit of a difference there. But to be clear, those shares are part of the LTIP program under the 2022 REMNOM. That has a 3-year window. Okay. Good question. Roger in the back.
I can probably talk without the mic. Can you hear me?
Talking to the mic. That way the people online, Roger, will hear you.
Gotcha.
Yep.
I would imagine that the number of shares allocated each year relate to the share price. So therefore, the lower the share price, the more the shares. The higher the share price, the fewer the shares. Is that correct assumption?
So with respect to the NED remuneration policy, that is correct. Because the net remuneration policy has a dollar amount, right? So that dollar amount buys a certain number of shares for the nets. That's it. Okay. If the share price is really low, you're right. The nets get a little bit more. If the share price goes up, the nets get less. That's how it is because it's based on fixed dollar amount. So that's how the nets are situated. With respect to the employee grants, whether it's executives or employees, it gets into a percentage of their salaries relative to the rank that they are in the company. And then yes, there is a dollar equation that takes place, and then from there an amount of shares are allocated. So you're absolutely right, Roger.
And data performance.
I'm sorry?
And data performance.
And that's right. And then obviously the performance metrics. Yes. Yeah. Okay. I don't see any other hands. I'm going to move forward. I know we're running a bit long. There's no further discussion. I now propose Resolution 7 that pursuant to listing 10.14, the shareholders of the company approve the business of the meeting. I appreciate everyone's patience. I refer to you to Resolution 8 of the Notice of Meeting, which relates to the approval of the issue of restricted stock units to Emmanuel Hernandez on the terms and conditions as contained within the explanatory memorandum accompanying the Notice of Meeting in relation to this resolution. The Brainship Board, in the interests of good governance, abstains from making a recommendation in respect of these resolutions. Errol, do we have any text or verbal questions received via the Lumi platform in relation to this resolution?
Yes, we have 3 questions.
Okay.
2 of them are sort of related.
Okay.
Okay. Why is he now issued stock instead of option?
Okay.
The second one from a shareholder, Rinaldi, I have emailed and asked company executives about the 8 million shares. I was advised that the potential tax obligation could have triggered a retirement to sell down shares, that COVID could have resulted in impact on the share price. However, on many occasions in the past, Sean and the others have said that the share price will do what the share price does. So why have you now tried to use share price as a reason to issue RSUs to Mr. Hernandez when you regularly say you cannot control the share price?
So I'm going to have Ken address all of that. No, that is
a story.
That was not a deflection. With respect to Resolution 8, I would hope every shareholder understands that we've kind of said that with respect to the questions of Resolution 8, Ken, I jokingly call him the historian of the group. He is going to answer those questions.
Yeah. I may have to have you repeat some of those, but I'll start with the ones I remember. As far as RSUs versus options, Antonio, I believe, touched on this earlier. We've made a shift to RSUs as a company policy, and that was based on some advice that we received from an expert global compensation firm. So this is something that we were told the Australian market prefers as opposed to options. So I just want to let everybody know that that's one of the reasons we've adopted it across the LTIP, and that's the reason that we did that with this share grant. The other reason that we used RSUs on this is that the number of options that we would have had to issue to make Manny whole on this grant would have been 3 times the amount of RSUs that we had to issue for this. So the share price has gone down over the year. And so this was an easy way to equate a number of shares for a number of shares. So this was cleaner math. And that's the main reason we did that. Errol, could you repeat some of the follow-up questions on that?
The person had been on many occasions in the past, Sean and others have said that the share price will do what the share price does. So why are you now using the share price as a reason to issue RSUs?
Okay. Yeah, so what I would say to that is we are not using the share price as a reason. If we were using the share price, we would have issued a much substantially larger grant to Manny to equate to the compensation package that he had before this incident occurred. Again, he lost significant value over the course of the year, and if we tried to equate this on a dollar value basis, we would have issued substantially more equity.
So there was one last question.
Please.
Chair. Would you please explain what Manny has done for the company since stepping down as chairman a year ago to deserve 8 million RSUs? I am happy to vote in favour of this if there's a convincing reason.
I think that reason was spelled out in the explanatory memorandum. So I would like to direct that shareholder to the explanatory memorandum, which clearly indicates why that resolution is on the ballot. Are there any questions in the room? There's one here.
Jeff Hines, shareholder. It wasn't clear to me from the announcement as to why the company felt a need to negotiate on this matter? And is it normal operating procedure to negotiate on expiring options?
Ken?
As we included in the ASX announcement, Manny approached the company with the desire to not exercise the options. And we were happy to accommodate that because that would avoid the exercise of 8 million options and subsequent sale of 8 million shares, which we felt would be damaging to the share price. So as abnormal as that may seem, we felt that that was the most beneficial path for our shareholders. So we did open up the discussions to do that. Unfortunately, it didn't go well, which led us to where we are today. But it was all very well-intentioned.
All right, seeing no further questions as I canvass the room, I would like to now propose resolution number 8. Oh, I'm sorry, Steve. My apologies, I didn't see that as well. Yep.
Sorry, I'm not going to go into detail. I'm still struggling with the effect that under options, the company was to receive in the order of $1 million US. Now we don't receive anything. And I still don't understand how that works. And I'm happy to explain later, but there's too many issues to discuss. And I've looked at it very closely. But my issue is the $1 million company coming in. Manny did a fantastic job under very difficult circumstances. I've got the greatest respect for him. I think he should be, I'm comfortable with him being compensated, etc. But I still struggle that we're going to be issuing, call them an option, call them an RSU, there's still 8 million of there, and we're not getting $1 out of it, and he'll be walking away. If he sold it tomorrow, which he'll probably have to because of the being an RSU and therefore has a tax event, he'll walk away in the order of about $4 million. So that's it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll just go back to the earlier argument, which was if we were to have chosen options, what should the strike price be? Should it be the price today? Should it be the price where his options were granted at, I believe it was 16.5 cents in 2016 or 2017? We evaluated everything. We went through iterations and analysis until we were blue in the face to try to find something that was an easy, clean, swift, friendly resolution to make this matter go away. This was a small price to pay to make this matter go away. And again, if we tried to use a dollar value, which he could have made the argument for that, we would have been in having a very different negotiation with him. So I know you don't agree with that, Steve, but and we can talk about this later, but that's how that went.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you for your comments, Steve. Is there a hand there? Or is... No? Okay. All right. Sorry, just checking. If there's no further discussion, I now propose resolution number 8, that for the purpose of please ensure that you have cast your vote on all resolutions. I'll pause here for just a bit to make certain everyone finalizes their votes. For those shareholders here in attendance in the Sydney venue, please make sure you place your voting cards in the poll box held by Stacy here at the front. And I'm sorry, there's also a voting card in the back. I need to make certain that people have done that before I close voting, because once I close voting, they cannot take your card.
Oh, now this.
Behind you, there we go. As I canvass the room, is there anyone still working on their voting card? No? Going once, going twice. Okay. At this point, I will now declare voting closed. We will publish final voting results with the ASX and on our website here shortly. Once again, personally, thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your continued support of BrainChip on behalf of the entire board and the executive team. We certainly appreciate your support. We appreciate the dialogue. We appreciate the feedback. This now concludes the 2022 BrainChip Holdings Annual General Meeting, and I now officially call this meeting to a close. Good day, everyone.